I don't align with binaries.
Right.
I'm not stuck in these like rigid rules. You know,
Right.
I'm gonna accept that my sexuality is fluid. I'm going to accept that my gender is expansive. I'm going to embrace that beyond gender and sexuality, there's also lots of things that don't align with the status quo, with society.
Yeah.
And to me, that is what queer means. That is the philosophy, is that we don't have to put ourselves in a cage and feel like we need to exist a certain way to be loved or to be accepted, that we can be ourselves, and that is going to change.
Las Paleteras. Oli, oli, paletitas. Para los que son nuevos a este pachangón, yo soy Sheila.
Yo soy Cesar Camacho.
And this is Las Paleteras podcast, where we challenge ourselves, systems, and the status quo, pero siempre con cariño y un poquito de desmadre. So today we are giving Nalgona a little break, and we are joined by Luis Cornejo, licensed marriage and family therapist, certified sex therapist, and a fierce advocate for LGBTQ+ and BIPOC mental health. They're the founder of Psychosocial Media and the host of Queer Magic Podcast. Whether through therapy, fashion, or media, they bring healing, visibility, and unapologetic self-expression to everything that they do. Welcome, Luis Cornejo. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, no, thank you. Wow, that was a mouthful.
What a
Thank you for
goodbye.
that.
I know.
I was over here like sweating.
They
Like,
Trabalenguas, you know, I'm like tres tristes tigres. Pero okay, well, I would love for folks to know a little bit about, you know, you do so much beautiful work.
Thank you.
What inspired the work that you do? And I think it might even relate to what we end up the theme for today.
Yeah, so I do have many hats, play different roles. I'm a therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a certified sex therapist. I started working in fashion about like 4 years ago. So now I do styling. I also host my own podcast, Queer Magic, and I'm a public speaker. So I do a lot of education, a lot of advocacy work when it comes to talking about queer, specifically BIPOC queer experiences. And honestly, I think it's been like a lifelong journey. I mean, I think we all get inspired right through our lives and our own experiences. And for me, it was just my upbringing, being raised in a very religious, conservative home. Years and years of healing, unlearning, letting go, grief, all of that, to get to a place where now I choose to just allow myself to exist. And so all of these different things are, I would say, parts of who I've always been, but haven't always really allowed or nurtured until now. And so this specific journey for me started about 4 years ago when I think I kind of hit like a, oh my gosh, I don't like saying the word, I guess the phrase rock bottom, but that's pretty much what it felt like, was just hitting rock bottom, which was funny because at that point I had kind of gotten to this place where I thought I was going to be happy. I had a great career. I was working in a great job, had a 6-figure salary, had gone through grad school. I mean, it was what I was told was going to make me happy. And then I realized I'm miserable. I'm like depressed. I hate my job. I don't like myself. And I think at those moments, through that pain and like anger, I started to really question everything. And I was like, why am I unhappy? And then I realized it was because I had been trying to live up to this version of myself that wasn't me, but that I thought was going to make others happy and others love me. And I think from the anger and the rage, this kind of like journey started. It was like, you know what, I'm done. I ended up quitting my job, launched my private practice, started exploring my gender, which was always something that had come up since I was like a kid, like from the get-go. Like I knew I was different. There was something about me, but it was never welcomed. And so it was always like shame and a lot of religious dogma that was just present. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? Like I need to really figure out who I am. And it almost felt like a second adolescence, I guess. Like I was like a teenager again. I started like playing with makeup and clothes and being very rebellious around like people. Like I don't care what people think. I'm going to be me. And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of emotional work because there are a lot of moments where a lot of the religious trauma that I had experienced would pop up and make me feel like, oh my gosh, am I crazy? Like, is this really who I am? Am I being too much? Are people going to like me? Are they going to reject me? You know, all of these questions, right? Am I committing sin? And so I think through all of that, through therapy, through my partner's help, through friends that you know I had made that really saw who I was as a person, a lot happened in the last 4 years. And so this is, you know, where I'm at right now. It's still, for me, part of that journey. So I'm still on it, and I'm still figuring out who I am. So sometimes I love to look at old stuff that I started back then, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I was a baby queer, basically. Like, I was like a late bloomer, but also almost like starting off like as a baby queer, you know, figuring out my existence. Like, what do I want the world to see? And so this is how I pretty much got
today.
right now.
I feel like every time I see you, you just give me like queer joy. Because I met you at the premiere of DocuTales. You were hosting it, and I was like, "Oh my god! Like, they look so fabulous.
Maybe that's
they
when
look
I met
amazing."
you. I think I was there. That's probably when I met you. I think we probably had a brief conversation that night.
That is probably
so funny. We were
met.
trying to figure out where we met because we met before.
Yeah.
This morning too, when I was showering, I was like, "When was the first time I met them? When was it?" Because it wasn't.
that's
We
true.
also did a fashion show recently where we both modeled on the catwalk.
We did
It
the
was so
catwalk.
fun. But that was the first time I met you. I think you were hosting the panel and leading the panel.
You know what? It was such a blur because I was so nervous. That was one of the first times where I started to really just show up as myself and trying to figure out like my identity. You know, because I think when I started to dress up, a lot of folks would often think that I was doing drag, and I would always say like, "Oh no, I'm not that talented. Like you know, drag is an art form. It takes years. It's a whole like beautiful art form." And I was like, I'm just trying to like be me and express myself and just really, which is similar, right, in a lot lot of ways. But I think folks often thought I was performing, and I was like, no,
this is just me.
This is not drag. This is like
my Saturday night outfit. You know?
This is style, honey.
So I think that's why that night felt like such a blur when you were telling me. I was like, we probably did me, but I just remember being so nervous, putting myself out there.
I did not get those vibes at
you know
all.
what?
You were on that stage, like commanding the presence.
Yes.
Like I was like, oh my god, I need to meet this person.
No,
like,
I remember that too, and I think that's really beautiful to highlight to folks. Because sometimes we see folks and we see them, oh, they look like they are so confident, so fully embodied, and it's like, no, we are all working through the same inner mental struggles, and we're doing our best to show up, and like you showing up in that way and us receiving it that way. There's so much that went into that, including like, you know, you feeling nervous and all the things that you're working through, and how much more beautiful is it to know that we're showing up in this way, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard.
Exactly. And that's why I share it. That's why I talk about it, because I think that folks often think, oh my gosh, you know, look at them. They seem so confident, or they seem so sure of themselves. And for me, it's been a constant back and forth, you know, like internal battle of really giving myself permission while still acknowledging that the world's not very kind, that the world can be very mean. And so I do get that. All the time. I think about my safety. I think about how others are going to perceive me. I think about, lots of different things. And I think for me, that has been a big part of the healing process, has been knowing that and still pushing through, because I know it's who I am, because I know this is how I want the world to see me. And so what you just said, I really appreciate it, because I think there's a lot of moments where I do doubt myself, and people will tell me, oh my gosh, you look so confident. And I go, oh my God, I was like literally like internally like screaming, like I was like sweating, just because it's such a vulnerable place to allow others to see you, especially when you're showing up authentically. And for me, fashion and makeup and all that stuff, they're just tools. They're just tools. They're just tools to help us express ourselves. So it's not about that. It's really about, how do I want people to feel and see me? And for me, I want people to feel free and like to have permission to be like, I'm gonna dress up however I want and show up. This is me.
But it is super vulnerable, because like there's some spaces where we don't, like as queer folks, we don't always feel safe. Certain parts of town, or you go to different states, different cities, like, and you're like, I want to dress a certain way, and like I feel like if I don't like what I'm wearing, I move different, because I'm like, I don't feel like comfortable. But if I feel something that I love, and I'm like, oh yes, I could be I can do whatever I want. But then there's certain spaces where you're like,
right.
am I gonna get called something, or like, am I gonna get targeted? And like, some people don't have to go through.
Totally.
No, it's a privilege not to go through that. So.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into our topic, which but I just want to say two things. I think that, like when we see queer joy or just people living in their fullest expression, like understanding that a lot of times, it's not this toxic positivity. It's like you had to do so much work, and you're doing so much work to be able to still like share that joy with folks. And then the other thing that you shared, I think, is really important. A lot of us do want to feel more free and be ourselves, but it is a question of safety. And it is a question of like what community surrounds you to be able to be more free, right? And I think that gets into the topic that a lot of folks relate to, and I think that, just naturally we ended up kind of leaning into, right? So before we get into the topic, we like to ask our guests that join us, we always have our little paletas. What paleta flavor would you be if you were to be a paleta?
Oh my gosh. You know what? Honestly, I'd be, if you had asked me maybe a few years ago, I would have said tamarindo, because I love tamarindo, and it just reminds me so much of like growing up and like the culture. My mom used to make agua de tamarindo, and I used to help her peel the tamarindos. But honestly, I think the last year I've been feeling more like fresas con crema, because I'm totally a señora at this point, and I love it, and I'm fine with that. And I just like embody that, I think, now, and it just feels so natural to me. Yeah. And so people always say to me like, "Oh, you're so like a señora." I forgot, someone had called me what did they say to me? A friend, or like, "Pero eres la señora condesa," or something like that.
La señora condesa.
From like Mexico City or something. I was like,
te estaban llamando un poquito fresa.
And I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm going to embrace it, because if that's the energy I'm giving, that's totally fine. I know, I'm like, okay, and I definitely do. I think that's why that paleta. I love fresas in general, but then with the thought of it now, it's like, oh, you know what? Like fresas con crema specifically is very like...
Because it's like fresh and still like sweet, but not too empalagoso.
Yeah, and it has that like taste, right? It's so different from the fresas con agua paleta, because it just gives you like that crema, the flavor. It's so like rich.
It's a little thicker, no?
Yeah. It's thicker, it's richer, it's...
Tiene más leche.
So,
un poquito más grueso.
Yeah, exactamente. So to answer your question, fresas con crema.
There's more to it.
We'll explore a little bit more later. Okay, pues regresando al tema. So today, a little bit of a heavier topic, but we started to allude to it in just a conversation we organically had, where we want to talk about internalized queerphobia. To add a definition to that, because a lot of times we use these terms and we don't have a clear definition. It refers to the process where LGBTQ+ individuals absorb and internalize negative societal attitudes and biases against their own orientation or gender identity. This can lead to self-hatred, shame, and negative self-perception. So to open up the episode, we like to start with our Dicen Por Ahí segment. It's un chismecito callejero. Doesn't have to be true. It could be a hot take on an issue. So, for example, on the theme that we're talking about today, you don't have to agree with it, but it's just to see, how does this land for you? What are your thoughts on it? So, our Dicen Por Ahí today is que internalized queerphobia is basically our survival instinct that us queer folks develop after being closeted and trying to blend in or pass as heterosexual for many years. So, how do y'all feel about that statement?
I would say definitely agree to some level with it, because the reality is, like I mentioned earlier, the world is not very friendly or welcoming to queer people. Now, historically, if we look back, there's lots of places in the world where queerness was celebrated. It was embraced, even in, our communities, right, in Latin America, or what is now Latin America. There were a lot more, I think, examples of queerness where people were able to exist in a way that didn't feel so rigid, right? And now, because of everything that's happened, colonization, religion, white supremacy, all of these concepts, like structures and systems and, things that exist right now, I think that queer people have had to learn lots and lots of ways to survive, and lots of ways to stay safe, including internalizing some of these things as a way of trying to blend in and fit in, right? Because if we fit in and we blend in, and the more that we are normal, right, or we are like everyone else, then we're safer. People won't question you. And even when we talk about like gay men, right? I think gay men are actually a perfect example because they're the ones that have over time have been embraced more because of historically, right? A lot of the movement has been centered around them, but also male privilege and other things that exist. Gay men often try to emulate masculinity, right? Not that it's not a possibility or that it's a reality for many of them, but I think sometimes it is exaggerated, right? To the point where like, if I blend in this way, I can't be feminine, I can't, do this, or we even judge other people, right? Other people who are queer, who do exist in other ways, because if we do that, then we get to hang out with the bully, we get to like be cool and not be teased either. And so it is survival in that way.
Right. It's like we can still we can have, I don't know, maybe we can have a little bit of grace and understanding for why people act the way that they do, but it's not okay. But we can we can at least understand where it's coming from, and that's helpful in creating change. No,
absolutely. And I think that's why these conversations are so important, because a lot of people don't have that knowledge or education, and so they're walking around with this kind of like internalized idea of what it means to fit in and be accepted, and then they find out like, wait a minute, you actually don't. But it also means that you're going to give up a certain level of safety that maybe at some point past survival, you don't need anymore. Right? Because maybe you're okay and you don't need to keep fitting in. Maybe you can be yourself. And so in my work as a therapist, I've worked with tons and tons of what I like to call late bloomer queers. And these are folks who are in their mid-30s, 40s, who are just starting to come to terms and really embrace themselves as a whole human rather than just cling on to an identity based on their sexuality or gender. And for me, that is what queerness is, right? I think to talk about this, we have to give a bit of a definition, right, of what does queer even mean? Because it does mean different things to different groups of people.
100%. And I think these definitions are really important.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's very important for us to recognize that it's going to vary depending on age, depending on culture, depending on even like, I guess just by definition, right? Queer itself, like if we look up in the dictionary, it basically means weird, odd. Which is
queer.
Weird, odd. I mean, it was a slur, right? That's the way it was 100%. Used. It was used as a way to say you're not normal.
Right.
And over the years, it went from being a slur to being political to now being really more of a philosophy, which I think is what queerness always was. This philosophy that we exist beyond binaries, beyond limits, that we are not the same. We are all different, and that's beautiful. And we can exist however it is that feels most authentic to us. And it doesn't just mean gender or sexuality, which I think is what a lot of people often assume, that when someone says queer, they think, oh, they're what are they, right? Because I mean, if I say queer to you, like, you don't know what a queer person is. You're not going to be like, oh, does that mean your gender, your sexuality? Queer just means I don't align with binaries. I'm not stuck in these like rigid rules. I'm going to accept that my sexuality is fluid. I'm going to accept that my gender is expansive. I'm going to embrace that beyond gender and sexuality, there's also lots of things that don't align with the status quo, with society. And to me, that is what queer means. That is the philosophy, is that we don't have to put ourselves in a cage and feel like we need to exist a certain way to be loved or to be accepted, that we can be ourselves, and that is going to change, because we are very much creatures that go through experiences, that go through age. I mean, I'm not the same person I was when I was in my teens, I mean,
10 years ago, me.
I was going to say 10 years ago.
I was like, I can't.
20s,
not the same person. But queer is more free. I feel like it's more freeing. Like, it doesn't like put you in a little box of like, I don't know. Just
for sure.
Having a label on it.
Yeah, I know, like more freedom in multiple ways, because I feel like when you share that with other people that aren't queer, they don't have the same opportunity to like assign what they know about. For example, if I was to call myself a lesbian, currently I only date women, right? But so if I tell some like a person that's doesn't identify as queer that I'm a lesbian, they're going through their mind, right? Because anytime that someone tells you their age, anything about them, you're like, okay, what do I know about this category? And you're applying immediate judgment to those folks, right? And so when you tell a non-queer person that you're queer, they can't do the same mental things that they do when, if I tell someone that, like, oh, what I know about lesbians is da-da-da-da. If I tell someone that I'm queer, they can't do that as quickly. So I think I find it very liberating in that way, and also liberating for myself. And like, although I currently, I think because it is a philosophy, it is just by using that term, I'm opening up myself to thinking about how I'm operating outside of binaries, outside of limitations, and just even using that term for myself is liberating in that moment.
Yeah, and it's empowering, and it's also an opportunity to heal, right? To move beyond the things that we were given, that we didn't understand, that we just kept regurgitating and existing in, to really asking ourselves, like, who am I, and how do I want to show up in the world? And that was part of the reason why I launched Queer Magic, was because I started to really see a need for folks to understand what the word queer meant, while still respecting that, like I said before, it can mean lots of different things. It has meant lots of different things. It has evolved over time. But really seeing it more from a perspective of a philosophy rather than an identity, right? That queerness is basically liberation. It's freedom. It's allowing us to decide and to just naturally be who we are, which is going to be challenged by the status quo, which is going to be challenged by binaries, because in binaries, it cannot exist. Binary says it's this or that, black and white. And gender norms are a prime example of binaries, right? Male, female, right? How do men dress? How do men act? How do women dress? How do women act? And that's it. Like, you don't get another choice, right?
One or the other.
Yeah, it's like almost like the whole point is to make us all the same. It's easier to control, and this all has roots historically.
It's easier to control, exactly. I think that's such a great thing to call out.
Exactly. So I think that's the stuff that we need to pay attention to, is understanding the history, understanding the context, and knowing that this was all planned from the get-go, right? Because if people are put into A and B, then it's easier to say, well, this is what your responsibility, your roles are, and this is what yours are. And easier to control, easier to, to also not have people be different or question things, right? And so this happened, especially for indigenous communities during colonization, which is when the Spanish, what is now Latin America, brought in the religious ideals and basically said, well, we're going to live in a patriarchal society. Because indigenous people were not doing that. There's a lot of historical research that shows that people were, they had different roles, but it wasn't like, strictly. It was based on people's abilities as well. And so there were queer people. I mean, they even had queer deities that, they saw as the ones that had parties and had flowers and had pleasure, like there was an expansive...
And taught pleasure too, right? I think I read, read that somewhere.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I wanted to share something, because we were talking about how, like, sometimes in choosing safety, what we're doing is we're choosing safety, but we're creating more suffering for ourselves, number one, right? And what we're also sometimes doing, and we've seen, I think you were referencing this, is you're also sometimes like becoming an oppressor to other communities that are, for example, in the LGBTQ community, like white gay men, how they treat other folks. And I do some community engagement work, and I actually got to work on the strategic plan for the city of West Hollywood. And something they kind of had to reckon with is that they've never really actually been inclusive of the broader LGBTQ plus community. And so I got to do a lot of research around it. So the city was incorporated, a little history lesson. The city was incorporated in 1984, but because basically, the reason West Hollywood is so gay is because it wasn't actually like a city beforehand, and so there was no jurisdiction. Like, sheriffs weren't coming to check in, because basically sheriffs and police would go to gay clubs and arrest folks, right? Like hidden gay clubs, and so the city of West Hollywood didn't get a lot of that attention because they weren't part of LA. So what that meant is that there were a lot of gay bars that were there and like hidden, or having people were getting together there. But folks weren't coming, the sheriffs weren't coming to police them. And so that's how the city's gay community started to grow. But what happened was, it was mostly gay white men, and because they wanted to make sure that they were safe and they were not calling more attention to themselves, they put more limitations on people of color and women. So like in order to get into the bar, they had to show more forms of ID, or like there was just more restrictions on them to be able to come to the club so that they could exclude them, and so they would not call attention. So in order for them to be safe, they oppressed other communities. So I just wanted to we were talking about that.
I love that note. That's so important to name.
And that's still true today. And I feel like you see that West Hollywood is, I don't go there, you know?
And you know what? This is not just true with folks that are queer or the LGBTQ plus community. We see it with our own community, right? The Latin community, folks who have been here from generations and embrace whiteness because there's a sense of safety to that versus, also challenging folks who are undocumented or who are immigrants. I mean,
Latinos for Trump. Hashtag.
I mean, it's survival.
Are you a Latina for Trump? And I'm kidding.
No, but you know what though? It's survival.
No, I mean that's what
No, but yeah,
it's rooted. It's rooted in the same phobia that we have around or that like folks do around their own. Yeah,
and it goes back to survival. Survival 101. Survival is messy because it's not meant to help us grow. It's meant to help us survive. Survival is really about us using all our energy to like push through, get through, survive, right? To live. Yeah. And so when survival happens, we're not thinking about the context of what the cost might be of things, because we're just trying to push through. It's not until we realize that there's a real impact to survival sometimes, right? Like you were saying earlier, we start to internalize, we start to oppress others, we start to, really act in ways that are not always rational to us because we're just trying to survive. And safety is important. I mean, it's important to all of us, right? As humans, we all want to be safe. We all want to feel like we're not going to be in harm's way. Yeah. And so I can understand it from that context, but also what you just shared, that it can cause harm, and it does cause harm when it's not done. I think there's no accountability, maybe. That might be a better word, when there's no accountability and recognizing right, how we're also affecting and impacting, our communities, ourselves, other people. And so with the queer community and I think LGBTQ plus folks in general, a lot of us have been forced to hide, to lie, to learn a lot of these strategies so that we don't get in trouble, we don't get hurt, physically, emotionally, mentally. And we still see the repercussions of that even today, right? I mean, we still have high suicide rates amongst LGBTQ plus youth. We still have a lot of youth that are homeless because they're kicked out of their homes. And so these are very much valid reasons for us to do these things. But I think that the real harm is often to ourselves in this context that we're going to spend so many years afterwards trying to heal and trying to find our true selves. And that's not our fault. Yeah. It's not our fault. It's, the world that we live in, unfortunately. But I think the more that we know, the more that we understand, the more we talk about history, the more that we question things, the more that we allow ourselves to not be stuck in these rigid ideas, the more that we are allowing ourselves to start healing, right? And start unlearning things that were never really ours, that someone just told us.
Totally. So do y'all remember sort of like your first experience like with internalized, like if you would say that you've had internalized queerphobia? I think most of us probably have had it in some capacity. Yeah. Like, did you experience that like before coming out, like after? Yeah. What is your experience with that?
For me, I have a tia that's a lesbian, but she's not really out. Yeah. Not me outing her. No, I'm kidding. But growing up, she would project a lot of like I think maybe like a safety thing. Like she would make little comments about like, oh, te ves bien jotillo, or like this is like da da da, and like you look like someone from the town, and I'd be like, no, I'm not. I wasn't like out at the time. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh my god, why is she attacking me? Like we're on the same team, girl. Like, like come on, I see you, you see me. So like, and then I knew the gay folks from our town, but I would like almost like not want to be seen with them because I didn't want to be associated with like being that then, but they were like welcoming, but like it was like this inner battle of like, do I want to be associated with them? Because then everyone's gonna know and talk and like assume I am gay, even though I was, but I wasn't out at the time. And then my tia would always project stuff onto me. And now I'm like, as I'm older, I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. Like she was like just projecting, maybe like
she was trying maybe
she couldn't be as free as I was.
Yeah, or even protect you, perhaps. Like that was her, like,
like don't look like that because they're gonna talk and like, ¿qué va a decir la gente and stuff like that. But you don't realize until you're older that maybe it comes from like a place of like care.
I believe that. I think that a lot of times we do that to also protect others, to remind them like, hey, it's obvious. People are going to see, they're going to know.
Yeah.
You're not safe, girl. You know, like run.
How about you? Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I definitely remember. I was just thinking about it as you were sharing, because for me, it was really more of a natural, I guess, way of being that always got me thinking about, like, there was no way for me to escape it, because I remember growing up and being questioned about the way I talked, the way I sat, the way I walked, the way I played with my hair, the way that I wanted to put on my todo, everything. Like, I remember being told, like, don't sit like that, don't talk like that, don't say that, oh my gosh, like, don't wear that, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, constantly, like, this like, almost sense of, like, micromanaging, right? Because I think my parents, from early on, they were very aware that I was different. And so for them, it was like, we need to keep you safe. On top of that, they were undocumented for a really long time. And so there was a lot of fear around being different and being seen. And so not only was it there, that layer, right? We're talking about intersectionality now, right? Like all these multiple identities, but then they see me and they're like, oh my gosh, like, he's not like the other boys, he's over here playing with dolls, or like, he's like wanting to have his hair a certain way, or he's picking this color and that's not for him. And so I remember them constantly saying to me, like, boys don't do that. Boys don't do that. You need to do this. Come play sports. And me hating it and like feeling so like restricted and not understanding it, right? There was a lot of confusion. So I grew up with those kinds of messages that for a long time when I was in college, I would judge and criticize other queer folks that were free.
And it was,
it's so funny, like how many, like we talk up, like the same thing we've been talking about. It's
But because I couldn't be as free as them.
Right.
Like, I feel like part of me is like, I wish I could be that, but I'm not there yet.
So what do you remember? Like, what are some of the things that you would think?
Oh my gosh. I feel like, I think I've been like literally working through that.
What slurs would you use? No, I'm kidding.
I know. Oh
I'm kidding.
And you know what? I honestly, to be fully transparent, I was always like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't turn into one of them. I hope I don't become like them. I hope that I don't act like them. Oh my gosh, they're so feminine. Like, what's wrong with them? Just like all of these like things that just kept coming up around like what people did to me.
Right.
I was like saying like, you shouldn't act like that. You shouldn't walk like that. Why do they have this? Why do they have that? And now look at me. I'm over here like, like all of those things. But it was because it took time for me to realize like what you said. I was so hurt and like so angry. Like, how dare you like show up in the world and be you?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
And I can't be me. I can't show up as me. So it was internalized anger, which is again, going back to what you were saying, it's internalized and we just like, regurgitate it out towards others. And so for a long time, I was very critical of others. I was very judgmental. I kept thinking masculinity was the gold standard, right? For how you attract other men, how you date. And so I hid a lot of that for myself. I was like, I can't wear that.
So this is already when you were already like out as queer, as a queer.
This is when I was already out as gay, but in my head, like the word gay meant like you're still a man.
Masculine.
Like you still need to be masculine.
Yeah.
I was laughing in my head because I was thinking,
Dumb
oh
top.
my gosh.
I'm kidding.
I was like, shit. Like back then, I was like, Old Navy because I thought that was what I was supposed to wear, and I didn't even. You know what? And I've always had like a sense of style. I love clothes. I love colors, but I had to hide it so much that I remember back then being like, oh, I need to like look basic,
You're like, I can only wear blue, black,
and gosh, wearing something. I hate it. Like the example you gave earlier around putting something on and your body just feels awkward in it. I felt like that all the time. But I was like, this is the way that I'm supposed to dress. And this is the way that I'm going to meet someone and someone's going to love me, blah, 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 that my parents will keep loving me. And so
my tias won't talk shit.
Exactly. I used to tell my parents, oh, I have a girlfriend. I used to tell them I had a girlfriend, and like they would look at me and be like,
they would be so
happy for me.
Oh, they would.
They'd be so happy. They're like, okay, bueno, te van a casar, and I would be like, sitting there like my girlfriend was really, a lesbian. That was also telling people I was her boyfriend.
I totally had two friends in high school that they were a couple, but each of them were queer.
Oh, we kept each other safe.
I know. I feel like we all experienced the same things because in high school, what I remember too is just like both of you. I remember like the women that were like outwardly lesbian, like on the basketball team, being hella mask, and I'm just being like, oh, like I don't want to hang out with them. I don't want to be in the same. I'm critiquing them in the same way because
Because you thought you thought if I do, then people would think that I won't be safe, or what if I'm gonna turn into,
And so
many mind games being queer, like
totally. Because when
so much, like
because when I was little, like I used to like be what people when I was like maybe like 9, 10, I started dressing like what people used to call like a tomboy, right? Like I used to like wearing t-shirts and jeans, and I felt super comfortable in that. And then I moved I was in Chicago, I moved to California, and I remember this little boy was like, are you a boy? I've shared this on the podcast before. Are you a boy or a girl? Because you look like a girl and whatever. And I feel like that completely like shifted something in me, and I tried to lean into like the feminine, even though that didn't feel like the most authentic to me, but like that's what I needed to do. And so when I met these girls in high school that were like openly lesbian, I was like, oh no, like I can't believe that they're doing that. I was like afraid of them.
Yeah.
They're brave, but why?
Yeah.
I remember in high school, there was one person there who was openly and outwardly queer, and they were so proud of it. And they had a talent show, and they went up there and they did Madonna and like the dress and everything. And I remember being so uncomfortable, almost like thinking if people like judged them, they're like looking at me too.
Oh.
And like almost feeling like I was hiding in the crowd.
Yeah.
And then now when I think back, I'm like, I was so enamored with what they were doing and who they were. But that fear and that almost like it felt almost like a sense of, like I felt like a sense of guilt for admiring. And also at the same time, fear, thinking like, oh my gosh, like I can't turn into that. Like that can't be me.
Yeah.
Like people are looking at,
people are looking at me.
Yeah.
I feel like I've experienced that too at different moments of my life where I'm like, but why does it feel this weird? Like, but it's also very liberating to see someone like make people feel not uncomfortable, but like, I'm here, I can show up this way, and like, me vale if you can.
And discomfort is fine too. That's where we grow the most. And
that is
absolutely right. Yeah. Sometimes we need to be uncomfortable and like understand that it's something coming up for us. It's telling us something. Right. About the way we've been treated, about the things that we've been taught.
Right.
And so for me, like when I think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like so judgy and like mean, and like I avoided making friendships with lots of queer people because I just thought like the same thing.
You were trying to be the friends with the right
I had to be friends with the right people. And then, I spent years feeling a lot of guilt. I remember going to therapy and sharing how like it made me feel so bad that I had thought and said those things and avoided relationships because I thought I was going to be safer. And at the end of it, I just felt alone.
Yeah. It's usually the case, I feel like. So I feel like you talked a little bit about how that queerphobia affected your relationships, right? So I'm wondering for you, like how you felt like that that queerphobia, has it affected your ability to, or who you chose to be in a relationship, how you were in a relationship, how you acted, how you presented? What types of men you pursued? I know it has for me, for sure.
What type of man? The todos, no, I'm kidding.
Turning into a therapy session over here.
Or rather, like...
Text my therapist right now.
Or rather, yeah, like if like queerphobia has affected how you approach that and how that's kind of changed.
Kind of what you said. I kind of avoided certain types of gays.
Yeah.
Like different friend groups. Like in college, I was like, oh no, I need to be with like you said, like they look more normal, not normal, but more
like straight passing.
Yeah, like a little gay, but not like
too gay. Like you're like the level like measuring like.
Yeah, you're like in the right piece where it's like it's not too much,
like not too effeminate.
But it's like out of safety, I think. And then I think I moved to LA, and the more I started playing with like fashion and stopped caring, I like gravitated towards more femininity because I was like, oh yeah, I like embracing this side. Now I don't really care. Now I feel comfortable with myself and what I wear. That like my friend groups are so different now. But before I used to just chill with like the regular gays. I don't know, but it was so like, I think it was out of fear too, or maybe I was a little jealous that I couldn't show up in that way and wear a little crop top or wear something super feminine. Yeah, carry a little bag.
And like you overthink things, right?
Yeah,
where
for
like
sure.
The boots are too much of a little color. Like someone's gonna look at me if you say something.
Or like if we're walking down the street, we're gonna get called out because 3 of them look too gay, and then you know what I mean? Like, what are we gonna do in this situation? So I think it was out of safety.
I used to practice walking straight because I remember being told that I walk too gay. Like I remember practicing in my room, like trying to walk like masculine and like put my chest out and do all these things like a damn chicken, like
That was like me and family parties. Like I feel like because my mom would be like, "No te pongas eso," and I'm like, "Girl, I feel like I had to like perform."
Yeah.
And I was so stiff. I'm like, I just want to like even bailando. Like mom was like, "No que te gusta bailar." I'm like, yeah, with my gay friends because I'm not questioning what people think how I look and how I'm dancing.
You felt safe.
Yeah.
And you didn't feel safe there. I felt like that at family parties all the time. Like my aunt would try to get me out to dance too. And I loved dancing with her when no one else was there.
Yeah.
But when that would happen, I'd be like, oh no, because I'm going to move my hips too much or they're going to...
You're going to feel the music and then people are going to be like, yes, they? Not me being homophobic, girl. This is that was an example.
Right there.
That was an example.
So my next question is how internalized homophobia is still part of your life.
No, now I embrace it. I feel like now when I see someone, I'm like, oh my God, like, you look so good, or like try to give compliments, or like, I don't know, I feel like even with like my tios or tias or like parents, like I brought my parents to that premiere on Documental.
Okay.
And I was like, there's a lot of different types of queers at this event. And like, I feel like my parents were thrown into it, but I was just like, they like embraced it. And I'm like, I feel like they just need to see all the shades of the rainbow or like all types of queer to like, not just see like the stereotypical.
Yeah, I mean, like again, going back to like maybe they feel a little bit of discomfort, but like in that discomfort is the growth.
Yeah.
Right?
But why do we feel so much discomfort? Do you still feel that sometimes?
I do.
Like,
all the time.
For sure.
All the time. I don't think it goes away because, like I said, we
live in the world that we live in.
Yeah, we're always going to be reminded. I think,
and especially right now, it's like really, really tough.
And I try to catch myself when I'm falling back to being judgy, but I'm like, why?
Oh, me too. I get that sometimes too, and I'm like, nope. Like, you know what? People
like
are who they are. And you know what, though? It is good because it does help me personally practice joy for others. So thinking like, I don't understand it. Maybe that's not me, but I can be happy for them because they're happy. And I see how much joy it brings them.
Yeah.
And to me, that has been so liberating because it's reminded me that is the whole point of why I even talk about queerness, because it's not about being uniform either. You know, I constantly talk on my platforms like, don't think I'm trying to tell you to like be queer like me. Be queer like you. Like be inspired to find out what that means to you, not to look a certain way or to fit into a certain narrative. Because for me, this could be it right now, and then later on it changes.
It looks different.
You know, this is the longest I've ever had my hair, and I'm bringing that up because hair for me was always a very activating, I think, like trauma response, because I remember I was never allowed to have long hair. Like as soon as my hair grew a little bit, my mom had me at the barbershop. It was $5 back then, by the way. She would have me at the $5 barbershop. They're cutting my hair. I know, back then it was so cheap.
My mom would cut my hair.
Oh, she started to.
And my dad, she still cuts my dad.
You know, she used to, and then she cut my ear once because I was moving around. And then she never did it again. So she's like, I'm thinking of the $5 place. And we used to get my haircuts there. But it never got long. Because that was a thing, and it still is a thing. Like they still bring it up. I've had conversations with my mom where we're totally cool, and then it's like,
the hair.
Pelo? And I'd be like, what?
That's my mom now when I dyed it. She's like, apenas te mirabas bien, and I was like, girl. Or I painted my nails once.
Apenas te mirabas bien.
My dad like made like a face, and I was like,
that's savage.
Girl, like I don't know. I gotta be queer everywhere. I can't just like pick certain spots.
And it's just this is the thing, right? Like how big of an impact these things have, right? Changing your hair color, doing your nails, expressing yourself, right? Because it's going against, like I said, that status quo, that like normalcy thing. And so for me, when I think of my hair, like now this is the longest I've ever had it, and I'm letting it grow because it feels good to me. It feels more like me, but I still get pushback. And there's moments where I look at myself and I'm like, maybe I should go get a haircut. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. You know, my hairdresser told me, you know, you would look great with highlights. And the whole time I was just sitting there like, I would look great with highlights. And then the first thought that came in is like, what is my mom going to say? What is my dad going to say?
So,
how am I going to show up to lunch? You know, this is going to take a while. So it does.
To the family party, I'm like,
it shows up. It shows up.
Totally.
I've been pushing it though. I've been pushing it. The last time I got invited to cousin's baby shower, I showed up with my nails done. And this is the thing, like for me, like and I think for everyone in general, it's a very individual, very vulnerable journey. We are all trying to figure it out. And so I'm never telling people, even my clients, like, you need to do it this way. You need to show it. No, I'm like, you know what? Whatever feels comfortable for you. Because I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like for me. And I went to the party and I had my nails like done. And luckily my parents weren't there because it's not that I worry, like I'm fine with them seeing me, but I just didn't want to hear it. But my aunt, the one that I was mentioning, I love dancing with, she's always been the escandalosa, you know, the one that everybody like always talks about, but she's the most welcoming, loving, kind, fun person. And I remember when she saw me, she just like looked at me and she's like, oh, me gustan tus uñas. And she was like, you know, have a shot with me. And I was like, yeah, like we were like hugging and stuff. And like everybody else, nobody said anything to me. And I remember sitting there thinking like, you know what, like I know they're probably thinking or maybe even like something's going through their mind. And I started to realize like this is where it comes up for me again. That phobia, that internalized perspective of I need to show up a certain way for them because this is how they want to see me. And then pushing through that and being like, no, like, this is who I am. Yeah. And I'd rather have them love me for who I am than for someone that I'm pretending to be that isn't really me, because they don't really know me then. They just know
then that's
some
not
version
you.
of me.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just going to say, I mean, I think that we all share that. I think the biggest like lesson, I think all of us probably feel like a more fuller expression of ourselves, but that doesn't mean that this is still not coming up. But I think the difference for me now is I still notice that, I am still thinking when I'm going to go see my family, let me wear the outfit that's maybe not too like, and sometimes I dress different ways, and sometimes I am wanting to dress more masculine. It does take a little bit more work for me to be able to dress like that. And when I'm going to go see my family, I am thinking about it more consciously, like, I don't want to dress too much like that. So I feel like that's it manifesting still. But I think the difference now is like I'm able to catch myself in that like, what's happening right now is that like, I'm experiencing, like I'm checking myself, is this going to feel safe? And so the difference that we have now, whether it's both about ourselves or how we're thinking about other people, is like that we can take a moment and we can practice that mindfulness and that exploration of what it is that's coming up, so that we can and not judge ourselves for it, have grace for us, because again, it's all about us. Like our safety is like what's guiding our decisions, but notice like at what cost are we being? What is that assessment of safety versus expression?
It's like having that empathy and compassion for yourself, like you're saying, right? Like being able to say, you know what, this is okay. Like you're also thinking about your safety, and then you deciding where you want to push a little bit, because then that's where we're like, well, you know what? I'm going to show up this way. For me, it was the nails. I was like, I'm going to push a little bit because this is who I am. And, I may not go like, pero I'm going to go like this. And like I said, right, you push. And like I said, I think this is a very natural and very normal response from us, because we are seeking safety. We don't want to be rejected by the people we love. Like even our family, as complicated as it is, as difficult as, it can be to navigate sometimes, we still want to be loved by them. Yeah. And so I think it is very hard. And like I said, it's a very intimate, very individual experience where we get to decide. But for me right now, it has been a lot more around like the idea of, am I doing this to protect them? Because if I'm doing this to protect them, then who's protecting me? Yeah. Because I also need to be protected. I'm more at risk than they are. And so that's where it starts to like make sense to me of like, you know what, like they're going to be okay. They're going to be fine. They'll be a little uncomfortable. And you know what, if they really don't want to have, and I actually have had family members who didn't want to have relationships with me. And we don't.
Yeah. And that's not where you need to be. If they don't accept you fully, like, because I also felt the same way. Yeah. Or like, I don't want to make my parents feel uncomfortable if I dress a certain way, people look at me a certain way. But then at one point it's like, I'm not going to come to these spaces anymore if I can't show up as myself. Yeah. And you know what? And it's beautiful because I think our experiences really, all of them, right? Our journeys really speak to others, because on the lighter side, I have seen tons and tons of younger folks whose parents accept them for who they are. And I've seen them show up and be themselves. And I've gone to events where like, mom's there, dad's there to support someone, and they're queer and they're questioning their gender, and they're so loved. Yeah. And that always gives me hope, because I remind myself, maybe I don't have this, but this is what I want to see in the world. Yeah. And that's okay, because I have it in other ways, from my friends, from family members that do accept me, from my husband, and so that is okay for me. That is all I need. And so I think the other side of it too is that when we show up, when we push through, when we're fearless, even through through being like all the internal stuff and being scared, there are people watching, and you don't know who they are.
And like me and Cesar said at the beginning of this conversation, we were inspired by how you showed up emceeing the Undocu premiere, right? And we both remember that, and we both remember how you went up on that stage and what you embodied, and not knowing that you were really nervous, and that was one of the times that you were really expressing yourself, like that was part of your what a meaningful part of your journey that was for you, right? How beautiful is that?
Thank you. And that's what I mean, right? It's those moments, like we can sit here together and like talk about an event where we were celebrating people too, and then like we, seeing each other. I think that is the purpose. That is the goal for me. It's not about telling people how to be or how they're gonna get there. It's really about letting them know that it's okay for them to figure it out. That it's okay for them to be scared and to survive and to go back and forth and in and out, and because that is the reality. We, like I said, we live in a world that does give us challenges, but it also gives us lots and lots of really beautiful opportunities and beautiful people that come into our lives, you know? Yeah.
And that's the beautiful part about like showing up as yourself. Like, yeah, you never know who's watching. You might like inspire your little primo who's like, you're not giving them hope that they could show up like that too and express themselves how they want.
Exactly.
And something you mentioned about the journey, I feel like there's a lot of key friends that I've had along my queer journey that have helped me express myself better. I remember the first time I painted my nails with one of my friends who was like, let's just do it. And I was like, I don't know, like that might be a little too much, but you slowly meet people in your queer journey that like help you embrace yourself, like get out of your comfort zone and discover yourself. But 10 years from now, we're probably whole different people.
Yeah,
we'll be so
totally. And being open to that. So given like where we're at in our journey and feeling more free and bold, are there ever times that like folks have commented like on other, you know, queer folks and how have you responded to them? Or
now it's different. Now I'm very protective.
Yeah.
Now I am very aware, very much reminding myself that I am part of the community and not separate from it. And also that, you know, me speaking up, even though it's terrifying, because I think, like I said before, it's not that, you know, I show up fearless. It's that I'm terrified, but I also know that it's what's right. And I also know that other people need someone to step in for them the way I needed it. You know, I spent years and years and years looking for people that I could connect to, people that I felt saw me and not just like the version that I had to put out, but saw me. And so I know now that that is also part of my responsibility, is to show up for others and to step in. And so the easiest thing I think that I've done and I've learned is whenever I'm anywhere, in an event or even walking on the street and I see a queer person and I know they're just being themselves, I smile at them. Yeah. And they smile back at me. Yeah. And it always feels
a little compliment
so nice.
goes a long.
Yeah. It's like in a sassy way, you know? but we're both like sassy, and I'll just give them a little like sassy face. And like, we literally do like a little like, you know, like a little movement. I'm like, okay, I see you.
Who wore it better? I'm kidding.
Yeah, but it's safety, you know. Totally. I saw this commercial. I don't know what it was, but it was a commercial around like it's like one of the Pride commercials that, you know, they put on TV and stuff, and it was about like a rainbow bracelet or something, and how when people see it, like they feel comfortable. For me, it's almost like that, but it's more of just being myself and smiling, that I could see someone and just be like, okay, I see you, you know. And people like they connect to that. They're like, okay, there's another queer person.
It is so
here.
nice.
There's
it really
another
does.
one in the
I always
room.
do want to. I was like, I always do wonder like who else's family. Like it sounds so silly, but no, I mean it's it's community.
But when you find an hermana, you're like, okay, cute.
For sure.
Like a layer like a weight comes off.
Yeah,
too.
that you're
like,
not alone. But for me, it's just like really thinking about like especially our like just trans folks and trans community, because we do really have a privilege, whether part of it is like us not fully expressing it, but whatever. However, I feel like the way that I present currently, like I have a privilege within the queer community. So like I feel like as much as I can speak about and support the trans community, like that's the privilege that I have,
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And you know, that's so important. Thank you for naming that, because we know that trans and gender expansive folks have always been at the forefront of our liberation for all of us.
Yeah.
And even today, it's still so important. And this is not new. You know, I think that's another thing that I do as well, as the education component. I love doing public speaking. I love doing workshops. I love doing podcasts, because I get to talk about these things and bring them to people's consciousness, but also hopefully leave them with curiosity and opportunities for reflection. Yeah. Because a lot of times people don't know, you know, they don't understand. And also there's real impact in ignorance. So I like to use education as another way of protecting and also bringing stories to the forefront. You know, through myself, but also from other folks. And that's why I started the podcast. That's why I, you know, started my fashion work, because I wanted people to feel comfortable and I wanted them to know that we exist. And this isn't new. You know, a lot of folks sometimes will tell me like, oh, like I've been seeing this more and more. Like, what's going on? ¿Qué pusieron en el agua? You know, I'm like, nothing. I'm like, people feel like safer and they're like showing up and they're like, I'm not going to be scared anymore. And we have existed like since the beginning of time when humans were out. There were you cannot tell me that people came up and were like, oh, men and women, like this is who we are. People were like living, they were surviving, you know, and then at one point they got consciousness and started thinking all these things. And then like them, you know, I mean, that's the reality, right? Humans, we are messy. Yeah. And so I think that for me, it's a reminder like, hey, like this is not a sickness. This is not a phenomenon that's happening now. There have been gender expansive people throughout history. We see it in indigenous communities, even in Europe, because the Europeans did not exactly dress masculine either. You know, when you look back and you're looking at like the French, I always think about those things and I'm like, it was not an issue before. It's because of control. And how do we like tell people that, you know, they're going to be under control? It's by saying to them, this is where you're going to fit. This is kind of how you fit in the system. And so when you don't, you know, you're that colorful one, they're like,
we got to put you back in the box.
We got to put you back. And, you know, so that's the reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're also on their queer journey.
100%.
The folks
I mean, exactly like we always said, we were critiquing the people that are critiquing a lot. You gotta, those are the people you gotta look into.
You'll find yourself too. No, I'm kidding.
So, you know, you shared that you were a late bloomer, and then you also, as a therapist, you work with a lot of folks that also are coming out, coming to terms with their own feelings and their own identities, and also late in their 30s and 40s. So I'm wondering, you know, what do you say to them, or what might you say right now to folks that are maybe really dealing with this internalized phobia, that are not ready to be out? Or
I would say that it's okay. It is okay to understand it. It is okay to know your reasons, your intentions for why you're existing in the world in this way, because it may not be safe for you. You may not have anyone encouraging you or supporting you, but don't let that be it.
Yeah.
You know, don't let that be it. When I started my private practice, I specifically made sure that it was 100% queer and BIPOC. And that's all my clients. My clients are all queer or BIPOC. And I did that for a very specific reason, that I know we don't have a lot of spaces or a lot of places where we are not just affirmed, but also embraced fully. And so I wanted to do that for others because I didn't have that space. Yeah. And so now in my work, whenever someone comes in and they share their journey with me, oftentimes they tell me it's because they saw me and they were like, I saw you and you were just like, you know, you. And there was a part of me that had a reaction, but then another part of me that just felt like you would understand me.
Yeah.
And you know, and what I tell my clients is, look, there is no one way to be. There is no path. There is no anything. I cannot, even if I had it, there's no way for me to tell you because we are all on different journeys. However, I'm here to help you figure out what that looks like for you. And then we start to ask the questions. We start to explore. We start to look into what are the tools out there to help you feel more aligned. What are the safety precautions? Like, who are you keeping safe from? And who are the people that you don't have to do that with? Like you said, when I'm dancing with my gay friends, I feel the same way. I don't have to think about how I'm moving my hips or what I'm wearing or how I'm being like, you know, a hot mess on the floor. And that's what I want for people to know, that there are places where they can have joy and celebrate and be themselves. And so I tell folks, don't focus on reaching some goal or something. Focus on you starting off at that first step, which is just letting yourself know that it's okay. And then take the steps you need to get to who you are, and that will continuously change, and that's okay. Like I said, it could be las uñas pintadas one day. It could be something else, right? Like just acknowledging,
a little heel.
I don't like that. Okay. Yeah. And I work with folks who tell me, like, you know what, actually, like, I'm not into that. I'm like, that's totally fine. You don't have to be. If you align with, you know, heteronormative stuff, like if that's appealing to you, then that's fine too. Yeah. But allow yourself to not feel like you're restricted to it, you know? And I think that's where I stand, is really allowing people to play and explore and figure out, first of all, if it really is for them or not, and then they can decide. So I think that's what I would say to people, is just don't feel pressured to be anything. Feel inspired to be you. And what does that mean? Only you're gonna know. And you're gonna find out by taking those risks, by finding people that are gonna cheer you on, that are going to really be there for you, by connecting with community, by trying things out and then saying you hate it if you don't love it, and just don't, you know.
Pero no vas a saber si no,
There's not one right way to be.
There's not one right way.
Queer, part of the LGBTQ plus.
No. Yeah. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation. We're arriving at our closing segment, which we call Mete or Saca. Love it, right?
Okay.
So, you know, based on our conversation, Mete is something, you know, what are you inviting in? Okay. Or Saca is, you know, what are you letting go of? And so you can choose either or. So what are you inviting in? ¿Qué quieres meter? Or, you know, what are you letting go? ¿Qué quieres sacar?
I want to let go of what we were talking about today, the queerphobia. I want to let go of the little moments, right? I mean, I know they won't go away, but I want to let go of them more and more, you know, even if they show up, to not be as strong, because I want to continue to do this work and to exist in the way that feels free to me. And to do that, I think I need to, keep doing work for myself, right? Keep letting go of these little things. So.
What about you, Cesar?
I'm gonna let go of being judgmental. Not that I am, but I feel like sometimes it comes up. You know
we're all, like, it's natural. We're judging all the time.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we are.
No, we love to judge. Respectfully.
It's survival too, though, because you're kind of like looking like, are they safe? Are they not?
But it's like, how can we judge like less? How can we judge in a different way, right?
Embrace,
Because when you're judging, you're assessing if a situation or a person is safe.
Yeah.
It all fucking comes back to safety every time.
Yeah. Being a better ally too.
Practice joy for others.
Yeah,
be like, well, I don't get it, but then they look happy.
I know, that's a good, that's
actually,
that's such a great practice. Like if we're noticing that queerphobia come up, that discomfort, that judgment of others, how can we transform that? I mean, like, where's that coming from? Oh, let me actually send them joy.
Yeah.
We're
in community. We gotta be there for each other.
Yeah. What am I inviting in? I think more of those more like kind of similar to you, but I'm looking at it like more little moments of trying something. Where can I push? Where can I go a little bit and wear something that's a little bit, whatever, like something a little different. So I really, beautiful.
I love that. We need a fashion show.
All right, y'all. Okay, Luis, well, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your experiences with our audience. We'd love to know where folks can find you, follow you, all the things.
Book an appointment.
What are you working on exactly?
No, I primarily my website. It's www.luis-cornejo.com. You can see my modeling portfolio, my offerings in terms of like fashion and photo shoots and styling, all of that on there, and the podcast too, Queer Magic. And then my therapy website is www.psychosocialtherapy.com, and that's where you can book an appointment if you want to work with me as a therapist. And then finally, Instagram is probably the platform I use the most, and that's at Luis_the, THEE, like Megan Thee Stallion, and then _ LMFT.
Beautiful. Pues muchas gracias. Y recuerden, la vida es más sabrosa con nosotras porque somos
Las Paleteras.
Hi, Paletitas. This podcast is produced by Joel and Elpidio Perez, along with your hosts. Las Paleteras is edited by Augusto Martinez, with music by Cintia Morado and Ingrid Guijarro. Special thanks to our friends at Mitu and Sonoro for production support.